Music City Zoom call, of which we hope to have a number of these coming up as we begin to get momentum through Music City Sault Ste. Marie. And I just want to let you know that we do have next week, we will be featuring Scott Ashley, the president and CEO of Get Ready Global, on safe reopening and running safe festivals. Scott and his team have great depth and experience in infectious disease control through the hospital and healthcare system. And they've also developed tracking and tracing, digitization for ensuring safe workplaces. Then on the March the 10th, we have the Downtown Music City Movement. I'm really looking forward to this one as well, which is Mark Garner, the executive director of the Downtown Young Business Improvement Area. And they've done a tremendous job. And we know that that particular area has a music strategy and has formalized that process, which is sort of where we hope to get ourselves. And then we have next week, and I'm afraid I don't have it in front of me, on the 17th, I believe it is, or the 24th, our final one about creating your digital music business. Again, another one that will be, I think, a spectacular event. So welcome again, everybody. We are going to be recording today's session so that we can continue to have this on file and for reference. And I encourage everybody to use the chat box. We will be monitoring for any of your questions, and we will open up during the last few moments if there's anybody who would wish to ask Erin or Chris a question. So first off, I really would just like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the lands that have been inhabited by Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. And we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here. And we thank all generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. We recognize and deeply appreciate the historic connection to this place. We also recognize the contributions that all Indigenous peoples have made, both in shaping and strengthening each community represented here, our province, and our country as a whole. The recognition is also clearly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities. And it's the feeling of our leadership team that we brought together early on, that music really is a cultural connection and can really be a key mechanism in breaking down barriers and opening up our humanity to the cultures that come to our community. I want to take a moment as well just to thank NORCAT and Digital Main Street. Without the funding that came through that organization to help build Music City, to finally get some feet under a movement that we've been trying to create for some time. And then also to Destination Northern Ontario, who's also made a financial contribution to Music City to help us focus on the potential and possibilities that exist through music tourism. Again, please feel free to ask any questions, notify them in the chat box. Simply, if you just want to ask a question, just say you would like to ask a question, and we'll do our best to make sure that we get to that. And also like to just introduce Chris Campbell, who's going to be moderating a discussion today. Chris is with Music Tourism, and we've been able to engage Chris to help us through the formulation of Music Sault Ste. Marie and the eventuality of a strategic plan, help formulate the task force. And I know many of you have probably spoken to him throughout the last year in getting us to this point. So Chris, I am going to turn it over to you, put myself on.
I think he's on mute there. It's an honor.
Oh yeah, sorry, I got myself in it for it. That's the way these things always work.
I couldn't hear you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much, Rory. It's an honor today to be able to introduce you to Erin Benjamin. For those of you who don't know her, Erin is the president and CEO of the Canadian Live Music Association, and she has been since its creation in 2014. As a former touring and recording artist, the former director of Folk Music Ontario, the Canadian Arts Presenting Association, and also the founder of Ottawa Women in the Music Industry. She's highly regarded and experienced, an industry veteran. And I can tell you firsthand how tirelessly she works, how passionate she is about the music industry, and tremendously respected across the country as a leader and as a strong advocate for our stakeholders. And she's just an awesome person. Erin, welcome. And more importantly, thank you for all the work that you have done and continue to do since this all started. Well, from way before this all started, but in particular, I've witnessed it firsthand. You've been an incredible advocate and a resource. So thank you and welcome as we try to get through these most challenging days that our industry has seen.
Well, gosh, thanks, Chris. And nice to see some familiar faces here, like Robin. How are you? What a long time it's been. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today for a bunch of reasons. Partly because I spent 13 years living in Northern Ontario. One of the things that you won't read in my bio was I was part of the startup of Music and Film in Motion, which is now part of Creative Industries Ontario North, and spent a lot of time still today, as much as I can, on Manitoulin Island. I was a big fan of the Wailing Aztecs. In fact, a couple of them sang on my last recording project in 1998. If for those of you who were born before then, you may remember this amazing band and so many great artists coming out of Sault Ste. Marie. And I think the last time I was there, I spent a little too much time drinking tequila at Lop Lops. So don't know if Lop Lops is with us today, but sorry about that. I'll start by giving you an overview of the association, just so you have a sense of who we are. And then I'd love to dive into the Music Cities piece and any questions you want to take, because there's a huge range of information that I have that I think could be useful to those of you, no matter what sort of stakeholder you are, if you're directly in the music industry or in a related industry, in terms of the pandemic and what I see today, tomorrow, and down the road. I would like to thank you, Chris, because you're in great hands with Chris Campbell, an amazing leader in the tourism space for sure. And it's amazing too that you have Mark Garner coming from the Downtown Young BIA. Mark is a dear friend of mine, and has had huge impact on Music Cities conversations across Canada and around the world. In fact, I pre-COVID took him to Halifax to start one of the conversations there. And I would say at this point, Sault Ste. Marie is probably a little ahead of Halifax. It's taken them a while to get stuff moving, but I know that Mark and I went to meet with Mayor Savage there a couple of years ago and had the conversation. So you really enjoy hearing from him, another passionate music fan, and has done so much important work in this space. So the Canadian Live Music Association, as Chris mentioned, was founded in 2014, and I was brought onto the team with the board of directors to help build this thing, ostensibly to get better at, or starting to enable the live music industry to be more effective at storytelling, telling its own story. So I always say this, we have an internal and an external story. Our external story is an advocacy one, helping government to understand our size and scope, both our direct and indirect impacts, and ultimately, and I'll probably say this a bunch of times today, sort of helping governments municipally, provincially, and federally begin to really understand how to best leverage their own local music economy. So bringing stakeholders together, building, programs and services and research and development, business and professional development for the industry, and advocacy being our number one goal. But we also have an internal story to tell each other, and that is, why hasn't Canada's live music industry been better at organizing itself, as we see in so many subsectors of the music space? Chris mentioned two associations that I have run formerly, Capico, the Canadian Arts Presenting Association, and Folk Music Ontario, which back in the day, and Robin will remember, was called the Ontario Council of Folk Festivals. And there are many, outside of the live space, there are many industry associations in this country that are going on 40 and 50 years old. Look no further than the major labels, songwriters, publishers, and their agendas and narrative have been front and center with government and have, as you can see, especially in time of crisis, have truly penetrated public policy making and thinking for decades. So the live music industry has been behind the 8 ball, and it was one reason why the development of this association was so paramount. So enter the pandemic. Actually, well, just before I get to the pandemic, so we represent Canada's concert sector. So venues, clubs, concert halls, arenas, festivals, promoters, agents, managers, ticketing companies, and this whole supply chain that represents and sort of makes a show go. So from insurance companies to graphic designers to other networks, etc. So if you take a look at our membership list at canadianlivemusic.ca, you'll see a huge range of suspects there, some usual, some unusual. And together we make up this association and try to achieve our common goals. So one reason that association work, and those of you who are members of associations will fully understand this, one reason why associations can be so powerful are those common goals and advocating on key messages to government, all speaking from the same page, using key messages to reinforce your priorities and ultimately influence that ever important public policy. And that has been a huge part of our focus. And before the pandemic, we spent a lot of time talking about music cities and talking about the value of local live music economies, looking at conversations we could insert ourselves into to help policymakers and government alike understand the importance of live music and what live music actually is and why it matters to a place economically, socially, and culturally. And this is really a lot of the foundation of the Music Cities effort. And I'm sorry, you're going to hear my email going off nonstop. I'm afraid I don't know how to mute it, so I do apologize. So the pandemic created I'll just go straight to COVID at the moment so we can understand maybe what shifted. Prior to COVID, the live music industry in this country was contributing over $3 billion to GDP and creating 72,000 jobs. And this is important to know because in terms of that storytelling, I think there's just a lack of awareness with government, especially about the power of live music and how it impacts local economies, both directly and indirectly. And just like the Music Cities sort of theory teaches us, there are many indirect companies and sectors who benefit from live music activity, like local restaurants and transportation and accommodation and travel. And you all know, right? Tourism, especially a huge benefactor of live music that, brings people together, especially from out of market. So the pandemic really created an opportunity. Unfortunately, we never would have wished this on ourselves, but an opportunity to really elevate that awareness for government and help them understand that if we were to lose an entire sort of segment of the music industry, be it live or other, so live music is facing, we've already lost approximately 75 what I call primary live music venues across Canada, with more predicted to go. In fact, our latest statistics says 64% of Canada's live music companies are not predicted to make it to the end of this, and we can unpack that later if you'd like. If we see a major attrition in the live music space, well, what naturally, and those of us on this call would understand this better than most, we'll see a huge impact on our ability to tour in this country. And if we deplete our ability, our touring networks in this country, then we lose opportunities for artists. And if we lose opportunities for artists, we won't see as, we'll have fewer artists and we'll have less cultural content, we'll have less storytelling, we'll have less impact on culture broadly, but then we'll lose that entire economic piece that has become so vital, not only to our cities, but also to our artistic infrastructure. So an artist, as you probably know, artists don't make enough in this country, not nearly enough, but what money they do make, those who perform, the vast majority of it comes from live performance. So enter the pandemic, we're seeing a complete decimation of the live music industry, and especially with smaller companies. And so we need to address this, and in the long term, think about how we regenerate. Well, I like to break things down into short, medium, and long term impacts when I'm talking to government about recommendations from our sector, what we need today, what we need tomorrow, and what we'll need down the road. And when we're looking through a Music Cities lens, I think it's essential to think long term. And you know, obviously we have to broaden the scope to think about other sectors that have been directly impacted, and what kinds of support and resources we are all going to need to be able not just to reopen, but to truly recover. And understanding what that timeline looks like is not everyone's favorite conversation. I can tell you a lot of major stakeholders in the live music industry can't hear me say what I believe the timeline is here. It's much longer than any of us wish it was. But it's really important when we're thinking about planning long term to understand what the impact of the pandemic, you know, what the toll will be, and how we address it to ensure that we can, to the extent possible, mitigate the loss of cultural infrastructure, and from a tourism perspective, how to regenerate that. So, for example, Sault Ste. Marie could leverage its physical assets and be, come out of this ahead of potentially other markets, thinking strategically about what it will need to reinforce, it's the value of its local live music economy. Chris, shall I keep going? Can I touch on some other things?
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. I think, when this whole thing started back in March, I think everybody was blindsided. The industry was blindsided. And I mean, when you were looking, my first conversations with venues that are clients of mine, major, small, medium sized, they were all kind of shifting dates to, a few weeks, months down the road into the summer, thinking, there's no way this will last till August. And so that was the first mindset. Health officials, took the approach of, it was almost a one size fits all. Safety of everybody was important, and the restrictions as things started to reopening, as far as the public concern, were, based around, 100 people outside, 50 people inside. Very much, drive-ins were the only thing that we saw, virtual concerts, that type of thing. Moving forward, though, now that we know that this is coming in waves, and that there may be, it may be a while to get out of this, are there lobbying efforts that are taking place to look at other scenarios, be it indoor, outdoor, to try to create a more feasible, safe plan of attack? Because we've seen these, whether it's in South Carolina, there's a outdoor concert where people are in pods. We've seen these things. Is there another scenario heading into the summer that, that people are looking for other, rather than just 100, just the flat 100 people, 50 people model? Are there other things in the works?
Well, I mean, I can tell you what I've heard. And first, I just want to apologize if you hear some sort of squeaky chewing sound. It's my dog, who only chooses this toy when I'm on an important meeting. There's very little negotiation to be had there. I think we're going to see a combination of, obviously, small shows. There's a movement afoot to run some pilot festivals, especially in Ontario and in Ottawa in particular. I think I'm sort of loving this word, although I'm sure I'll be sick of it soon, hybridity, between live streaming options and live shows. I think there's still going to, though, be a huge amount of caution. I mean, I don't know, is Sault Ste. Marie in orange? Forgive me, I should know this. Or green? What color are you in the Sioux?
We are yellow.
You're yellow.
Yeah.
Yellow is just one after orange. Is that right? One better than orange?
Yeah, it's better than orange. The next step is green.
Okay.
That's
well,
great.
My goodness. Yes, we can only dream of yellow. But so it's really interesting. So you have, you're having a different experience already, but we just went to Orange here in Ottawa the other day, and I'm sensing a lot of hesitation from live music promoters or venues, including performing arts centers, who are saying, you know what, it doesn't feel right. Let's just wait it out. So what does this mean for the summer? I don't, this is all speculation. I reserve the right to change my mind and say something different in 2 weeks from now, because that's how this thing has been unfolding, you know, with new information. But I think summer will be hopefully a bunch of small shows and a combination of live streaming and audience if we're lucky. But beyond that, I mean, I'm also seeing some really interesting use of hotel spaces. Perhaps you've seen our friends Livestar in Alberta who are doing these hotel balcony concerts. I think we'll see some different takes on that sort of thing, leveraging existing space and working with tourism stakeholders to try and find a win-win solution. You know, the bottom line is that our emphasis has been on moving money through the supply chain in any way that we can, so that artists as well as venues and you know, suppliers, production people are seeing a bit of money roll in the, you know, our favorite stat these days is a loss, 92% average revenue loss of those working in the live music industry since March. You know, all the emergency measures in the world can't really help if you can't open it all. So it'll be interesting to see what summer brings and in different parts of the province.
Now, in looking at the virtual concepts, you know, being somewhat familiar with the film industry by June, you know, after the pandemic, was able to open up in Ontario. I think it was like mid-June, they were allowed to have, very heavily restricted, but they were still allowed to do, you know, 10 people on set in Ontario. And even during the recent stay-at-home orders in Ontario that were put in towards the end of January, it did not impact that production. So productions were allowed to continue to shoot with 10 people, yet virtual concerts had to stop. That was very frustrating for a lot of people, including yourself. You know, was there any logic given to that, or is it, you know, what was the? I talk me through some of that. You know.
Well, look, Chris, I totally understand, and not to cut you off, but I mean, I don't know if we have anyone from the film and television production community on the call or anyone from public health, but if we do, like, don't be shy to jump in. Let me just say that you know, it's a very fraught conversation. Film and television, you know, I've spoken to the CMPA on many occasions, especially in the last couple of months, to try and get some clarity, or basically I wanted to know how they made it happen. And when I was talking about the associations in the music world, like film and television have been organized for a very long time, and they carry a very, very big stick. The economic impact, and look, I was talking about music and film in motion in Sudbury and bringing the film industry to Northern Ontario. I mean, we all know why we would want to do that, right? We understand the economic impact. So what film and television have, and what they establish very quickly that no one else has in the live performing space, is the budget to test. So they're testing cast and crew on a regular basis. PCR tests, these are not rapid tests. They're PCR tests. They're being tested in some cases. If you're cast in a kissing scene, you're being tested every day. If you're the security guard at the door and you only see 3 people a week, then you're being tested less frequently. But the bottom line is you're being tested with regular frequency, and the film industry has been able to put the transmission percentage in front of government, which my understanding was 0.001 from across the province. So look, we've got the testing, we've got the protocol, we've got the budget to pay for it, and now we've got the evidence to say that we are not spreading. So here's all the science that we know you don't have, we're giving it to you, ergo don't close us. In the live performance and live event, so it's not just live music, but for the rest of us, that kind of financial commitment to PPE and testing simply is just, you know, I understand that even rapid tests are going for about $140 a pop, fully from start to finish, depending on, you know, their variables. Right. But just imagine even if you're a small shop and you've got 10 people, well, maybe the next night you've got 10 different people. So there's a lot more transition in our community than with small live streams. So, but it's a really, the bigger question here is like, what about the science? Where is the science? Look, we're seeing differences between provinces in how one is allowed to sing in a live stream, right? Alberta and Saskatchewan, I've just learn this are requiring you to be masked. No, if you're singing, no matter what barriers and no matter what other protocols are in place, including social distancing. So individual public health units and the provincial, leadership are really varying across the board. But why this matters to us and the being in the weeds and getting the nuance and the detail here is because we need to continue to do everything we can in a really positive way, encourage public health to work with us, and where we can demonstrate our ability to keep people safe. There's Charlie, right on cue. A lot of the work that we've been doing in terms of provincial advocacy, Charles, come on, have been to help, walk government through our processes, put evidence in front of them in terms of guidelines and protocols and documents to show them that we're able to, we've been thinking about this. What does it look like to move a person through this venue or facility so that at least they're considering how we can reopen with some sort of meaningful capacity. And the reason that matters is so the math can work. Because right now, no matter live streaming or what, the math simply is just so difficult.
Thank you. Looking through, from the very start, the Canadian Live Music Association was very involved in lobbying efforts to try to get the support, financial and resources for the music industry right from the get-go. And continuing that, I know your recommendations of the association are for additional relief, continuation of wage subsidies, rent relief, that type of thing. How is that conversation going? What do you think the outlook's looking like there?
So federally, we just submitted our pre-budget submission, which we're calling the Canadian or the Live Music Recovery Plan, and there are 7 key points. Victoria, I see from my offices here. I wonder, Victoria, if you, I'm not watching the chat, so perhaps you've done this, but you could drop some links for folks. And let's make sure we touch on the campaign too, so that people understand how this is connected to some of our broader efforts. So the recovery plan includes our first priority, which is a phase 3. So for those of you who may not be aware, the Department of Canadian Heritage had a $500 million amount that they were able to disperse across their universe, very diverse portfolio, everyone from book publishers to the Stratford Festival, for example. And we're able to flow money quickly through 2 phases. Well, I'll say quickly for phase 1.
Yes.
Phase 1 went to existing clients of Canadian Heritage programs, and they had a formula that they leveraged, and they dropped some money in your bank account, and that was your emergency relief money from Heritage. Phase 2 was much more complex, and I don't need to linger here too long, but just to say that it was a lot of heavy lifting on our end. This goes back to the storytelling. A lot of live music stakeholders do not have a pre-existing relationship with the federal government. They're a small business. They would be less likely to be accessing government programs or grants or et cetera, like pre-COVID, none.
How you doing?
For the most
I'm
part.
sorry to interrupt, but it looks like the chat is disabled.
Are you at the office this afternoon?
Yes.
Could
Okay,
s-
I might swing by
And well, we have a convergence of
Sounds
interesting
good.
things
Well, I think you just
happening.
need to
Hey,
put it
Rory,
back
you're
together.
not on mute.
Set it up. I don't think you need to sign anything else.
Sorry, just a second.
And just wondering if someone could enable the chat, please.
I think the
Oh yeah, it looks like the chat's disabled too. Okay. So where
Sorry.
was I now? And no worries, if we can't get the chat working, I'll be sure to get the links to Chris. And of course, my cat is crying at the door too, so it's all the things. So so looking back at phase 2, it ended up being 23 million, but it wasn't an easy get. And what we had to do, the storytelling piece, was make sure that the federal government understood what would happen if the live music, sort of the touring piece of the live music industry, was kneecapped. And that's where the whole concept of phase 2 came from. And we're very grateful for that. And so our first recommendation in our live music recovery plan is a phase 3 with additional support coming back into the live music industry. And so on. So there, in fact, and this is really important for any tourism stakeholders, a whole bunch of our other recommendations in that recovery plan are tied directly to the work of this amazing hardest hit coalition. Follow me, won't you, while I go to my front door and let my cat out. Come with me, friends. The Hardest Hit Coalition, if you're not familiar with them, you can check out hardesthit.ca. And they are a bunch of association leadership from hotels, tourism, hospitality, and live events. Goodbye, Kat. And with amazing leadership from the Tourism Industry Association of Canada, and in particular, the Hotel Association of Canada, working to really influence, for example, the fall economic statement. So we work very closely with them. That's where the HASCAP program came from, was that kind of advocacy. And we could talk about the HASCAP program a little bit too, if you like, but the Hardest Hit have made recommendations for the federal budget coming up in the spring, and we have riffed off of those and made our own recommendations sort of under that umbrella as well, in addition to the sector-specific recommendations.
Okay, awesome. Okay, just a reminder to everybody to please, now I think the chat is enabled, to please send your questions in the chat if you have not done so already, because I think it was blocked, so please continue to do that. Thank you, Erin. Sault Ste, my experience in Sault Ste. Marie, and Sault Ste. Marie is has started their own Music City task force. We're digging into everything, and I can tell you already, for a city of its size, it's very, very rich with artists. Has a great venue mix, some amazing promoters. There's so much talent. The one thing that is missing is this connector, this like a centralized resource for music, which is something that we're working towards there. So a lot of the communication of things that you're talking about, the factor funding, a lot of that opportunities were missed along the way. In some cases, the industry wasn't aware of it. And through my interviews and discussions with different people in the sector, that's one of the main challenges and something that we're working towards. It's a strong and mighty city. It's situated, as you know, in the middle of Northern Ontario, and it's a strong and mighty. Any advice you would give to the task force members that are on the call today on what their work means, moving forward? What a music city is.
I'm so excited to have this conversation because of my history in Northern Ontario. And I've said this for years, like the North is so well situated, being in that touring corridor, like where Sault Ste. Marie is located is essential. Like you are a stop along the way, and that can be leveraged exponentially. And I'm sure lots of you already realize this and have been working towards that for a long time. But in terms of if and when cultural policy becomes a priority, and I'm not saying it isn't, but becomes more of a priority municipally, then that's when you'll start to be able to really sort of zoom in on, okay, what's possible? Take a look at places like, and I'm sure, Chris, you've talked about this, like the city of Mississauga. I know you're like, what do we have in common with Mississauga? What they're doing is really interesting. They're really focusing on festivals. Okay, we're this suburban sort of, hub outside of Toronto. A lot of people commute. A lot of people go into Toronto. Why are they leaving Mississauga? We can do the same thing here. It's not apples to apples. I get that, but they're kind of, and they're just one example of many cities I could use in the country right now. And I could go back to Halifax in a heartbeat, who are becoming woke to the notions. They have all of these assets in their hometown, and what they don't have, they can grow and sustain locally. So a really vibrant music city, and this already too, gives people a reason to stay, a reason to visit, a reason to come and spend money, etc. And it's not expensive. This is why I think a lot of municipalities, they don't say this to me, but I think they quietly in chambers or whatever, like, this is really, there's not a lot of zeros on this, because it isn't necessary, because you're working with what you have. So I think really looking at any kind of economic, cultural and fiscal policy that prioritizes the development, the augmentation, or the opportunity for the growth of live music assets, in particular live music assets, but also recording studios, and also publicists or graphic designers, all of the things that, that supply chain, that ecosystem that I was talking about, that can facilitate really robust growth, I think should be a priority. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. And in Northern Ontario, Sudbury's done some interesting things, and I obviously know more about Sudbury than probably anywhere else, and I still feel connected to Sudbury. And I've watched what MFM and Scion have attempted to do and have successfully done in many cases, especially with regard to animation, the animation industry. But there is just so much untapped potential. And if I may, when I lived in Sudbury, I really do consider myself more Northern Ontario than even Toronto, where I grew up. I mean, my dad was born in Coppercliff. My grandfather built our cottage on Manitoulin in 1955. So this comes from I hope it feels like an authentic, genuine place. Like when I lived in Sudbury, there was this thing about, like, I called it the Northern Ontario chip, which was like, oh, we could never do that here. Or let's hire a consultant from away to tell us what we think, all of those things. And I was always surprised, and I learned a lot about where that sort of attitude or self-confidence came from. I really believe that if you build it, they will come. And I've proven this many times personally, in Sudbury and in my own career. And I think that, when I was in Sudbury, I was running a record label for a philanthropist, former pharmacist from Dowling, Ontario, named Mark Palumbo, who I'm still friends with. And I don't know if any of you would know him. He was working closely with a wonderful artist who I would imagine some of you know, named Kevin Kloss, who lives in Levac, outside of Sudbury. And Mark always wondered if there was a Northern Ontario sound to try and sort of contextualize or situate his record label called Tower Bay Records on Windy Lake, just off 144. And he thought maybe there's a Northern Ontario sound that could be sort of packaged or marketed. And I was never sure that there was, but I can tell you there certainly is a Northern Ontario authenticity, a Northern Ontario spirit, a Northern Ontario sense of hospitality, of place, of beauty. And all of these things I think can be integrated. And I'm sure the tourism, far smarter tourism people than me are already leveraged that. But I think this can be woven into a music narrative that can be shared and sold broadly and can inspire people who live, breathe, eat, work, and sleep in Sault Ste. Marie to be proud of that piece of who they are, who they may not have recognized that or known that yet. And again, you'll forgive me. And I'm looking at Greg and thinking, I'm not on the ground in Sault Ste. Marie. I don't live in Sault Ste. Marie, and I don't know what it's like to live in Sault Ste. Marie. And so there's probably some things I'm saying that are, I don't know, maybe it's dumb or I'm missing something. But just from an outsider's perspective with some sense of Northern Ontario, I just think the opportunities are endless. And my only question would be, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I'm hearing that the chat is disabled again there. Rory or Don, if you're there, let me just see if I can.
Erin, I have a question for you.
Should be up and running.
If,
There we go.
could you give us, what Canadian Live Music Association has noticed of the growth numbers in virtual concerts, and where you see that? How fast do you see that growing? Also, what have you come across for funding towards something like that? Have there been any new announcements in funding in general for reconnecting? And also, well, we'll start with those two.
Okay, yeah. Don't give me too many or I'll forget.
Yeah.
So live streaming is here to stay. I think it's essential, especially as we know our timeline is unknown, right? So let's continue to find ways to connect artists and audiences and move money through that supply chain. At the Canadian Live Music Association, we started a program called Canaxis in Concert. And if for any venues or artists or promoters on this call who don't know about it, look it up. I'll explain why, because you can submit an application to us. We can provide a small amount of support for your live stream in partnership with this amazing technology company based here in Ottawa called Canaxis. They gave us some money. Our job is to move the money through the ecosystem. You apply, we give it to you. There's a small amount of money and we're going to run out of it eventually. I hope to regenerate this program and keep it going, but I use it as an example to demonstrate how important live streaming has been to, again, that math of our colleagues in the industry to get some money flowing, and also as a way to access audiences and grow those audiences in absence of any other opportunity to do so. We also see these live streams as vital for emerging artists and racialized artists and artists who may have, in before times had trouble accessing those career development opportunities. Something that we're thinking about in the future is if we're able to continue this type of program, and there's nothing stopping anyone from having this type of program locally too. Why not find a local corporate partner who can invest in this, and like, let's bring Sault Ste. Marie artists to the world, right? Because that's the potential of live streaming. I mean, it is true. There is as global as you can get. But what we would really like to do in terms of emerging artists is find ways to, you know, maybe you've got trouble. Let's just work with me here. You got Trouble Charger on the bill, and you've got a lesser known artist from Sault Ste. You've got Kale Matson. Kale Matson is a dear friend of mine, a beautiful human being and a wonderful singer-songwriter, but maybe not enough, maybe more people know Trouble Charger than Kale. You could do a double bill, and you could work with tourism, Sault Ste. Marie, Music Cities, Sault Ste. Marie, all of the key people, and package this amazing like Sault Ste. Marie night. That would just be, and you know, you've got expats around the world, and Northern Ontarians in general would resonate with. Anyway, so I think it's here to stay. I think it's a really important component to develop in the short term. I think there'll be that hybridity piece in the future. In terms of funding, there are the Foundation to Assist Canadian Talent on Record or Recordings, certainly is pivoting and has pivoted to take a look. So if you're an artist, you can make those kinds of applications. Canada Council just received 118 million from the Fall Economic Statement to transition more digital, like to sort of build out their digital strategy. So there's some opportunities through the Canada Council for the Arts. And the leftover Celebrate Ontario money, for any of you are Celebrate applicants. So Celebrate Ontario is a provincial program that supports festivals and events of all shapes and sizes, not just live music, in many provincial ridings across Ontario. They came out with a program called Reconnect, speaking of reconnecting. And I believe they may have just announced their first recipient list. I think if it didn't come out yesterday, it's coming out today, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, Chris, I know. I got a little birdie talk in my ear. There were phone calls made on Friday, so we're waiting for the list. Here's what I don't know. I don't know if they've spent all the Reconnect money. There was 11 million.
Yeah.
This is the leftover Celebrate amount. So, but if there's more Reconnect money to spend, but also here's a great opportunity for Sault Ste. Marie, and this is Minister McLeod's sort of white paper project. Please don't ask me what I think of the whole white paper concept, but what is important to know is that McLeod's Ministry of Tourism, Heritage, Sport, and Cultural Industries is working on a 5-year strategic plan. And so I believe very strongly that the Soo could easily have you make a major contribution to that strategy. In doing so, make sure that your priorities are reflected in any future programs. I will add also very quickly, and I don't want to run out of time here, there's just so much to tell you. We also made a pre-budget submission to our finance minister in the province, Minister Bethlehem Falvey. And that among us, a suite of recommendations included an increase to both the Ontario Music Fund and the Celebrate Ontario programs to be able to not only enhance future offerings for audience, but to help us rebuild and get our, rebuild some capacity and again, protect that cultural infrastructure. Then I will say 2 quick things in the province. The Ontario Small Business Grant. If there's anyone on this call who hasn't applied for that, next thing you should do is find it online and go apply. It is the simplest application, anywhere between $10,000 to $20,000 I hate this term, but free money. What you need to do is demonstrate a minimum loss of 20% year over year from April 19 to April 20. So if you believe that if you've lost more than 20% revenue, that grant is yours to go and get. They will decide how much you should have. It will be between $10,000 and $20,000. It's super simple. The last quick thing I want to add is the Skills Training Development Fund, which has just recently been launched. And Victoria, I don't know if you can put a link to that program, because you and I were talking about it yesterday if the chat's happening. Just take a look at this, because this is the government wanting to very quickly put a significant amount of money into the hardest hit sectors, ours being one of them, or tourism especially. So it's not a straightforward program. They're looking for larger projects, is my understanding, but there could be some opportunities for some of you. This is regard to retraining and skills development. So I'll leave that there, but there are, do not forget to take advantage of that Ontario Small Business Grant if you feel you're eligible.
Thank you. And I've got a question here from Robin McIntyre, and I'm going to try to see if I can unmute her, because we're having trouble with the here. Robin?
Chat has just come back on. I could throw this in the chat. I just wanted to ask Erin if there was a kind of a simpler or a scheduled methodology to help cities like ours divided up into that level of skill set for performers, access for presenters and venues. Because what I'm thinking about, you got me so, me, I got so fired up when you're talking about the Northern Ontario Sound and the whole idea that we do have something that's really marketable here. But the problem has always been that as a closed community, that professionalism sometimes is lacking because people don't have the access to the skills and the training and access to professional services that would help them become more of what we need that is in a professional bent. And, that's where we need to start working at a really low level, at a younger level with the schools and with dividing people up into the access to the type of talent that they want to go towards. And professionalism, expertise, performance chops is something that is so important. And unfortunately, that's why we're always, I won't say that the Sioux looks beyond, but most cities look beyond because, of course, the adage is if it's from away, it's better, right? Which is not true, especially not true.
No,
Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, it's nice to see you, Robin. And thanks for the comment and question. I mean, I honestly believe that we have to get out of our own way on this one. Look, again, back to my Northern Ontario experience, there was a lot of inability to get out of our own way. Just get it done is my thought. And, start somewhere and then assess gaps. And address them over time, but you need some sort of baseline, and I think that it's a chronic issue in all kinds of cities. Like we don't know what we don't know. Well, how do we answer some sort of fundamental questions? And I think a guy like Chris is the perfect guy to help you with that, to answer those. And you look at the city of London, and I mean, London is remarkable. No one thought the Junos could go to London. No one. And I tell you, I've been to a lot of Junos. It was the best Junos I've ever been to. And you know why? Because everyone from the hotel concierge to the taxi driver said, how do we do? We're so happy to have you here. We're so proud to do this. How are we doing? Are we doing okay? Everyone was invested and they were really inspired and fired up. And I think Canada's like, and you could apply this to any sector, but in our case, the music industry, music industry was floored at what London was able to do. And all these other cities and towns across Canada were like, wow, maybe we can do that too. There's a great goal for Sault Ste. Marie. I would love to see that.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Erin. And the Canadian Live Music Association, we've mentioned a few times the For the Love of Live campaign and the hashtag. Do you want to, before we're going to be wrapping up here shortly, do you want to give a plug to that campaign, tell people where they go, and take us through that?
Yeah, thank you. I can't believe how fast time is going. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm going to say a bunch of things right now. I'm going to talk probably even faster. So last Tuesday, the Canadian Live Music Association launched the For the Love of Live campaign. And Victoria's probably put some stuff in there already about this campaign where we invited Canadians to share live music memories and to basically say, we miss you, artists, fans, production, again, that whole ecology. It has two components. One is to raise awareness broadly with the public around the impact of COVID on the live music industry. The other is the advocacy piece to really reinforce the priorities that we've laid out for government and our live music recovery plan. Why this matters to you is because it is a tool for you to use locally, domestically, and internationally to help people take a look at the live music industry in Sault Ste. Marie. Okay, so you can localize it to any extent. As soon as you start looking up the posts, the hashtag, you'll get a sense of what this campaign is. Artists, venues, everyone is participating. I have never, and honestly, it's not just because I've never seen a reaction to a campaign in the music industry like this in my entire career. When we launched on the 9th, within hours, we were trending 4 on Twitter, like number 4 on Twitter. And it was National Pizza Day too. So we had some serious competition.
That's
and
awesome.
It was amazing. So this is a campaign. There are all kinds of ways on our website that you can learn how to engage. We have toolkits, we have graphics, Instagram, Facebook, any social media platform you want. Not only do I think it's a tool for you, we would appreciate you engaging with this campaign because you will help us help you in the long run. And one of the most important things you can do, and really what we're asking you to use the hashtag for really anything. Why that helps us is because we can start, like, the more posts, more people we have talking about live music, the more impact I can have in Ottawa, and at Queen's Park for all of us. And I want to say to each and every one of you that the Canadian Live Music Association has a very open door policy right now and probably forever, based on need and the long haul that we're in. So I want you to, if you are interested in learning more about what we're doing, we have a member listserv, but we've opened it up to community. So even if you're indirectly involved with live music, if live music plays a role in your professional success, or even, doesn't matter. If you want to get involved, let us know. Victoria can put her email address there if she hasn't already. She probably has. And join our listserv, join our mailing list. We have sessions all the time, live streaming, future of live music, funding programs. We get representatives from the Business Development Bank of Canada to talk to us about HASCAP. Whatever it is, we've done, I don't know, 100 sessions in the last 12 months. Really, really important information. And I invite any and all of you to join us. There's no cost. Just get hooked up, in part to address Robin's concern about that gap, that information gap. Come closer to our story and know that there are people who are driving the bus, the tour bus, so to speak, with Northern Ontario on my mind always. I have never not thought about Northern Ontario in everything that I do. And it's so fortuitous that Chris, a guy from London, was able to bring us together. So, I'm not the only one. The Canadian Live Music Association is not the only association out there, and I'm sure you're all plugged in various ways, but do think of us if we can help, today, tomorrow, and in the future. We would love to.
Thank you very much. I'm getting great responses from people on here, and you've given a pile of information. So on behalf of everybody on the call today, and Sault Ste. Marie, our task force, and all the music industry, I want to say thank you. Stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day, and all the best.
Can I say one more quick thing?
Yes.
Erin, if you've got a few minutes, if people want to ask a question, please unmute and go ahead if you've got a few minutes remaining. So.
Yeah, no, I can stay as long as you'd like. And the one thing I wanted to say, in addition to thank you, Chris Campbell, for all of your hard work and for bringing me aboard to this conversation, is here something that I know is so easy is feeling overwhelmed, right? Overwhelmed with the information. You meet Erin today. She's talking fast. She's sharing all this stuff. It's like, I'm glad I showed up to this session, but oh my God, it feels like a lot of work. Go slow and know that everyone else is going slow and they're picking their way through this wreckage, right? You are not alone. And it is right across this country, like, people are saying, what do we do next? So you have amazing leadership. The fact that Sault Ste. Marie is having conversation about becoming a music city is so far beyond 90% of the cities in this country. Be proud of that. I'm sure you are. And just know, go at your own pace. Try not to feel overwhelmed. Reach out when you need help. There are tons of associations and organizations out there who want to help you from a strategic perspective, because it's win-win for everybody. So just for me taking a breath here for a second and saying, I know that's a lot. I know that it's hard, especially if I'm just going to say this, it's been hard for Northern Ontario to generate the pace, the momentum, to keep it going, to find that right sort of connector. What is that thing and how do we build on that thing? But honestly, I think you're inches away from something really special. And I'm going to start crying. So let's take a question.
No, that's awesome. And, we really appreciate it. We took our lead from Music Canada, Erin, and Graham Henderson, and getting connected to Chris as well. And Chris has been a great advantage for us to get this going and pulling the industry together. So sorry for getting the chat box up and running a little late. It's, we're all, even after a year, still finding our way with all this new technology. So we are going to have this recorded, and Don will be putting out the link eventually through our newsletter. If you want to be part of our newsletter, which will have updates not only what the Chamber of Commerce is doing, but what Music City is doing, please feel free to reach out to me. I will put my email here in the box so you can get a hold of me. It's pretty easy. And we encourage everybody to continue to participate in Music City. I did put up earlier on, while the chat box was not working, that if you go to www.ssmcoc.com, we have a COVID page, and in there is also a ton of resources and links to a variety of support programs. One of those being Canada United is another third iteration of a funding mechanism. If you have an establishment and you're looking to get PPE funded or anything like that, that's also a great opportunity to link into some funds. There's the Canadian Business Resilience Network, some other resources there. So there's tons of stuff out there. Reach out to us here at the Chamber of Commerce. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate. Again, we've got a series of Music City webinars coming up that I think you'll find it's exciting. And, feel free to reach out to any of our leadership team that we have here: Todd Fleet, Greg Norrie, myself, Chris, and we have a few other folks on there as well. So any information you want to pass on to us is great. I also, I know it's a note there from Chris, about sort of focusing on ourselves and what we have to hold. We've got a little small group, hopefully planning to do something just like that, Chris, around, a 3-evening variety show type of streaming and maybe hybrid live forums. So focusing on the talent that we have here and the diversity of the talent that we have here in Sault Ste. Marie. So it's an excellent opportunity. Erin, please stay plugged into what we're doing. And we'd love to have you back at some other point in time. And obviously things are changing very rapidly, and we hope we can all digest as things evolve as fast as they do. So Chris, any closing comments? Greg, any comments from you?
No, but thank you so much, Erin, and thanks for paying attention to what we're doing. We've gotten great support, as you can see so far, and it's gaining great momentum, and thank you for being a part of it.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Last thing, TIO, Tourism Industry Association of Ontario. I'm sure that you're a member or not, but they're doing some really important heavy lifting in the advocacy space too.
What's it called?
TIAO.
TIO.
I actually reached out to
TIAO.
Okay.
I reached out to Beth Potter, Erin, and said, if they would want to speak to music tourism. And she said just to call you, so you're it.
Good. Well, they're doing a lot of in the tourism space. They're doing what I would call the most important work in the province right now. So get plugged in for anyone who's interested. They've got a great newsletter and some really good leadership. And there's my doorbell. So I guess I'm going to go. Thank you again, everyone. It's wonderful to see you all. Thank you so much.
Take care,
I think you planned that, Erin.
I know, right? Thanks again, Chris. Take care, everyone.
Take care, everybody. Thank you very much.
Bye now.